Today, we are reacting to Mr. Matty Plays, who, after playing Veilguard, he decided to further ruin his Veilguard experience by playing the superior Dragon Age game, that is, Dragon Age Origins. Dragon Age Origins is just the best Dragon Age game by so far. None of the other Dragon Age games have so completely nailed the experience of an RPG, from character creation to leveling to the companions to the story. Just none of them. Dragon Age 2 was nice, but the combat failed in some aspects, namely with the encounters that you were doing. Most of them just turned into like horde mode fights, and it got boring. Um, Especially with the gameplay aspect, where resistances were the thing that mattered the most. Inquisition, the gameplay overall was just mid, and it was just unimpressive. Not to mention how every side quest was just busy work, and you had to finish it in order to get to the rest of the game. And then Veilguard, the gameplay of Veilguard, in my opinion, is a lot of fun. It's an 8 out of 10. Um, if you just count the gameplay. But you don't play Dragon Age for the gameplay. You play Dragon Age for the story, for the companions, and honestly, after finishing the game, the story is like a 6, and most of the companions are like a 4. With Emmerich and Emmerich is a notable exception for me. He was one of the best, and I think Davrin was also a lot of fun to have in the party. So like, yeah, companions were like a 5 out of 10. It was just not amazing. But before we get into it, make sure to drop a like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to do all that fun stuff for the YouTubes, and let's get into it.
Salutations, everybody. It is
What's up,
Maddie here
Maddie?
today, and we are gathering once more to talk about Dragon Age, but not the one that's coming out today. We're actually talking about the one that came out like 15.
Maddie got so much hate for some shit that he wasn't even responsible for. Like, so many people just gave him so much shit. And you could tell that, like, you could tell that people very much wanted him to fail. The Veilguard fans, I mean, just wanted him to fail out of content creation over it, which, is never gonna happen. The guy's got like 500,000 subscribers. It's just not gonna happen. And then he actually had to come out in public and talk about what happened, how his editor leaked the things that he showed him, and then it ended up in some other guy's hands, when then it ended up in some other guy's hands, and that guy happened to be a racist, and he used the footage and he tried to pretend like he was associated with them. And it's like people just refusing to take the statement from Maddie of like, yeah, no, I have no connection to this person whatsoever, and just taking this other random guy's at his word, but not taking Maddie at his word. It was super weird. People just wanted him to fail. It was really, 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 really cringe. Everybody's reaction to it. The way I see it, it's like, yeah, he disavowed the whole situation, and as people actually got to play Veilguard and they started to realize, oh, this game is actually not that good from a Dragon Age perspective. This is like a 6 out of 10. Uh, ooh. Mm. Okay, I guess. And Maddie got redeemed by virtue of Veilguard sucking.
Years ago. We talked about Dragon Age: The Veilguard a few days ago. If you haven't checked that out, the review's out now. It's done stupid well, and I'm really thankful for those of you who showed out for that video. I think it hit like #3 on trending, so just
Ooh.
thank you for being a part of that. I was super proud of the review, and I'm happy to see how well it did. We've gained like 5,000 new subscribers since that video went live, so if you're new here, welcome. We just like to talk about video games here, and we're going to do just that in an admittedly retro rebound coded video. Normally, these sorts of retrospective videos go up on that channel, but after Starfield came out, we did do a revisit for the Outer Worlds, and
I think if you do like just a retrospect for no reason, then yeah, you can treat it as a retrospect. But you're doing a retrospect in the context of something that is very recent. So I think this should definitely go in the same channel as the actual new thing, I think.
thought it put a lot of things into perspective. And I wanted to do a very similar thing here with Dragon Age Origins after Dragon Age: The Veilguard. So let's do that. But first, ladies and gentlemen, a quick word from today's sponsor. The following video is brought to you by Kabam. Today we're taking a look at the latest game from Kabam. They're the creators of Marvel Contest of Champions and Disney Mirrorverse. This is King Arthur Legends Rise, and it's the latest.
Okay, look. We need more of this aesthetic. Like, why is fur on top of plate armor just such a winning aesthetic every time? It's so it's just it's just such an overpowered aesthetic. You just throw in a couple of knights that have fur on top of their shoulders as well as like they're wearing plate armor and they have fur on top. Why is this it's such an overpowered aesthetic?
And it's the latest trailer for the game. It's a, this is Maddie's favorite, all-new turn-based collection RPG. We love that here. Featuring an immersive story
it's
and
Raid Shadow
expansive
Legends.
exploration set in a stunning reimagined Arthurian
It even looks like
world.
Raid.
Players are going to be able to adventure through Camelot with an ever-growing squad of knights, mages, and rogues to battle epic bosses and mythical monsters with visually stunning combat. Perhaps best of all is that you can dive into this adventure with crossplay, where you can travel through the kingdom of Camelot to take on Arthurian quests, forge mythical weapons, and meet exciting heroes and legends. Pre-registration is available for this game right now, so become the leader of the legendary nation of Camelot in King Arthur Legends Rise. Click the link in my description to pre-register today and keep up to date on this amazing launch reward. So yeah, it goes without saying that after playing Dragon Age,
it looks like Arthurian Raid Shadow Legends.
Veilguard, I felt I needed a touch of soul cleansing, and this video really isn't designed to dunk on Veilguard.
This video isn't designed to dunk on Veilguard. We're 2 minutes in and you just said you needed a palate cleanser. What do you mean?
More so, again, to provide context, reflect, compare, and contrast, because I really view Dragon Age Origins more and more as time goes on as this anomaly at BioWare. Not in the terms of quality, but really in the type of game it is. BioWare, outside of Dragon Age Origins, has been an action RPG studio for like 20 years. When you look at it, they really dropped a lot of the turn-based or real-time strategy stuff around 2005 with Jade Empire. That was the beginning of a new BioWare. Then you had Mass Effect afterwards, and they were on a completely different trajectory. But in the middle of all of that, plus the Mass Effect sequels and whatnot, Anthem, you had Dragon Age Origins in 2009, which was a return to form with the kind of older spirit of BioWare, if you will. But since then, there's been nothing like that. And before that, for many years, there wasn't anything like that outside of my favorite game of all time, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. I think it just shows what people claim.
It is interesting to see that it's very obvious that RPG players prefer this type of game, because when you actually look at what the classics are, right? You look at the games that immediately became household names in the RPG sphere, and it's Dragon Age Origins, it's Mass Effect when taken as a series because of the dialogues and stuff, but less so. Mass Effect is less seen as an RPG and more seen as a shooter RPG. But it's Dragon Age Origins. It's Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate 3 became an instant classic, let's be honest. Like, people are going to be playing that game for 20 years. It's the old Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale and Planescape Torment, stuff like that. It's so obvious that RPG players want to sit down and have a list of spells that they can look through and read. They want to have like big codexes in the game that they can sit down and just read through, even if, it's a lot of text for most people. That's what RPG fans want, and that's why Origins, so long after its launch, still has a comparable player base to Inquisition, even though Inquisition has a multiplayer mode, and most of the people playing Inquisition are playing it in the multiplayer and just having fun with their friends, right? So it blows my mind. I do need to replay Baldur's Gate 3. I've been meaning to do an honor mode playthrough someday. I should actually get to doing that. I'll probably do it. I was looking for something to do after Planescape Torment. I might do that.
Clamoring so much for that older type of BioWare to come back, and in terms of gameplay and dialogue selection specifically, which we'll get into in a little bit, that it just shows how much these games have stood the test of time. Now, I've been playing Dragon Age Origins since like May of this year, just randomly picking it up here or there, chipping through it, because as I've mentioned before, leading into the launch of Veilguard, I was kind of excited because I do like Dragon Age a lot, and so I wanted to get all of those playthroughs done before the game came out. I failed epically on that. And honestly, if I did succeed on that, I think my disappointment would have been much, much, much higher after playing
I thought you weren't gonna dunk on Veilguard.
the Veilguard. But really, we got to talk about a lot of things that I think
Oh.
BioWare has gotten away from over
But yeah, honestly, if the last Dragon Age game you played was Inquisition before Veilguard, you probably won't dislike Veilguard that much because Veilguard is just a better game than Inquisition. But if the last Dragon Age game you played before Veilguard was Origins, ouch.
the years that I think would benefit them a lot if they went back to it. I look at kind of what Bethesda Game Studios did with Starfield. I know many people view that as a train wreck, but Bethesda Game Studios did go back to a lot of what made them great. With Starfield, I just think the execution on exploration was not good. But when it came to like the presentation of dialogue and just being able to read your options and decide what you want to say and having characters properly react to that, that is something that people wanted from a B.
That is something that I have heard a lot of people say. Like the dialogue in Starfield is pretty good. The problem with Starfield really is just the exploration, the broken promises in terms of scope, and the combat just being so uninteresting. On top of, just the actual RPG mechanics of character creation just not feeling like they're there. And that's the thing that most people I've heard talk about Starfield are very disappointed by. But I have heard good things about the dialogue.
BGS game, and
I wouldn't know.
man,
I
oh
didn't
man, do
play
people
it.
really want it from a Bioware game, and I sure do too. One thing I was really frustrated with in Veilguard is when I would select dialogue options, and you just wouldn't say the thing that you thought your
Oh
character
my god. Oh, fucking Veilguard.
was going to say, and the world wouldn't react to it properly. Whereas in something like Origins, I love this because it was introduced to me with Knights of the Old Republic, where you just see it fully laid out. Like, this is the entire sentence. This is what you're going to say. And it gives you more room for player expression, not just in, like, they can just give you a list of options instead of little quips in a dialogue.
God, it's like I was thinking of making a Veilguard review, but it's like Maddie just says everything that I would have said. It's like, yes, the dialogue in Origins is so superior to the dialogue in Veilguard. In Veilguard, it's like the option says, "Who is this idiot?" And then you click it, and it's like, "Who's this?" That's not what I said. I called him an idiot. Call him an idiot right now. And then in Origins, it's like, "Who's this fucking retard?" And it's like, yeah, that's what you said because that's what the text says.
Dialogue wheel, but also it's just the breadth of the sentence. Like, you can be brief,
Yeah.
and the character will maybe acknowledge that, like, wow, you don't have much to say, or you can say nothing at all. Like, sometimes that option is available. It's not always just what I think people look at in the bigger picture of like good and evil. It's player expression, and
And one thing that I think is important, I don't know if he's going to talk about it, but like one thing that I think is important in Origins, your character is matter of fact in a lot of situations. There are moments of levity, and there are moments where your character makes fun of somebody or starts joking around, and there are moments when your character kind of acts childish. 2 or 3 moments throughout an adventure that's supposed to last several months. And then in Dragon Age 2, Inquisition, and Veilguard, you can act like a clown throughout the entire adventure, and so it's impossible to take your character seriously in any real way.
I think Origins does an amazing job of that. Of course, with the origin story, I mean, being able to create your own character, that origin story, it can get really
And the fact that Origins is the only one where your origin actually matters and has an impact throughout the game, like there are secret items that you can only get based on your origin. You get a special merchant in Denerim if you're a dwarf noble who sells things to you at a 50% at a 50% discount or a 200% value if he's buying stuff from you. So it's like it's super meaningful to pick your class. And if you're a human noble, you get this really good sword and shield. If you're a mage, you get a really good starter staff. You get really meaningful changes to your game world based on your origin. In Dragon Age 2, this doesn't really happen, but you do still get that same origin-based prologue, even though you always have the same origin, realistically. And then in Inquisition, no origin, and then in Veilguard, and this actually pissed me off. Like I was 5 minutes into Veilguard and I got pissed off over this because it's like I go into it and instead of actually getting a mission, a prologue to get to know my character, I get a paragraph to read that then gets referenced a couple times throughout the game. by other characters, and it's like, dude, why don't you just let me play it?
really messed up in some
It
of
was
them,
super
especially like
annoying.
the elves and the alienage. It's really screwy there.
Oh,
But that sort of decision you make in the very early of the game defines how characters will react to you, how they'll speak to you, choices that'll be available to you. And it's that latter part that I think really defines Origins, and I think Veilguard was set up for it. Veilguard has that similar Origins feel in its story of like, we're building up to this big threat and we need to be ready for it. And a lot of Veilguard is spent
yes.
working on relationships with people as well as
The way it was done, they very much wanted to do a Mass Effect 2 type thing with the suicide mission at the end and the building up of everything, but it's like, no, they didn't succeed. They didn't succeed.
factions. Just the way you gain factions loyalty, for example, is completing side quests in a zone. Whereas something like Origins does my favorite style of storytelling. Again, you're hearing the word favorite a lot, so I am a little biased here. But Origins does let you go from zone to zone and you make a choice.
You can say that it's bias, but that kind of falls short when you realize that Origins has a 90% rating, and Veilguard, like on Steam, has like a 50% rating. It's very split. So it's like, yeah, no. You can say it's biased, but it's like I like I like eating cupcakes more than turds, so I'm biased.
At the end of that zone. So each zone effectively has its own story that's playing into the overarching main narrative, and these choices are going to affect the outcome at the end of the game. I always loved the choice between
Also, one thing that Origins does much better than Veilguard is that they have roughly the same game length, but whereas in Origins you're going from area to area exploring an entire country, in Veilguard you're exploring the entirety of Northern Thedas and you get a grand total of 6 areas and a couple of unique instances that you go through one time. So it's like Origins, despite being quote unquote smaller of scope, gives you so much more exploration
like the elves and the
because you're not
werewolves. I
always
thought that
trotting the
was like
same ground.
really
Like Veilguard had similar scope in terms of like maps and stuff that you actually got to explore through as Dragon Age 2, and Dragon Age 2 was contained to a single city. And I think that was I think that's definitely a dropped ball. I think that's definitely a bad thing for Veilguard.
cruel and dark and twisted. And that is what BioWare has done so well. And that's why the finale for Veilguard twisted me up a little bit, because it is pretty good compared to the
Oh yeah,
rest of the game. But even standing on its own, I definitely think it's respectable. It's not comparable to something like Mass Effect 2.
I definitely think that the finale of Veilguard was pretty nice. It definitely did a good job of making you feel as though all of those side missions and all those decisions were meaningful. And one thing that it did that I thought was really good is that it gave you fully unique cutscenes dependent on some choices. Right. Slight spoilers, but like in Veilguard, the only real decision that matters from prior games is whether or not your Inquisitor romanced Solus. And if your Inquisitor romanced Solus, you get a completely unique cutscene between the two of them versus the cutscene if they didn't romance. It's a completely different dynamic between the two of them. Although in my opinion, like if the Inquisitor didn't romance Solus, they shouldn't even appear. They shouldn't even be there. Um, which would again lean more into the uniqueness of actually making that decision, right? And other decisions, like for example, finishing Emmerich's quest line or not finishing that companion quest, gives you a significantly different outcome and a significant difference in some cutscenes. And the same goes for all the other quest lines because all of your companions have beef with these really powerful people who will naturally associate with the bad guys, and so you get to have this very interesting dynamic where doing your companion quests feels like you're doing things for the main quest, right? And I think that that's an important thing even if in Origins, it does feel like most of these are kind of like side quests in the sense that they're not really connected to the main story. And in fact, for example, the thing with Alistair where you go and talk to his sister, he straight up pulls you aside and says, "Hey, if we drop by Denerim, can we take this? Can we sidetrack a little bit to talk to this person?" and I think that that's important. Although at the same time, most of the companion quests in Origins are small detractions from the story, where it's like, hey, since we're here, can we also do this, right? Or in the case of Liliana, it's like, hey, we're getting assassins thrown at us. Can we go after the person that's, throwing assassins at us? And so you go do that. Or in the case of Veilguard, it's like, hey man, you're fucking depressed as shit. What the fuck is up? Oh, you need to talk to a woman. All right, let's go find you a woman to talk to. Or in the case of Wynn, it's like she mentions this person to you, this apprentice that she feels she failed, and there is no expectation on her part that you'll bring her to this person. And when you encounter them, all she can do is just offer you so much thanks because she had no expectation. And so it feels as though this companion content, the only companion quest in Origins that I feel like actually is a little weird because you're fucking traveling the whole country looking for Sten's sword. So it's like kind of weird that you like take the time to go do that. And even Sten looks at you and says, "Hey, you're kind of a weirdo for, getting this for me, but still, thank you. This is an important thing for me. Thank you so much for doing this for me." And so Stan actually takes the time to have this conversation with you and tell you just how much this means to him. And so I do think that the companion quests in Veilguard were very meaningful, much more so than a lot of the content in, for example, Inquisition. I don't think there was a single side quest in Inquisition that was meaningful, other than like, I guess, Iron Bull's thing, where it's like you either choose to be mean to Iron Bull or not, and if you're not mean to Iron Bull, he doesn't betray you, and if you are mean to Iron Bull and you kill his friends, um, then he betrays you. And it's like the difference is so stupid because it's like you're either sacrificing the Bull's Chargers for an alliance with the Kunari, or you don't do that and there's no consequence. There's no tangible consequence in the game. There's no difference in the game, and it really made the Inquisition feel like a very bad game compared to Origins. And Veilguard was a much better game than Inquisition, but definitely not better than Origins.
Ending, don't get it twisted, but I think it's good enough. That said, why it's good is because it has the choice that the rest of the game is missing, whereas Origins has every single arc in every single zone with a big choice at the end of it. So you get to face that moment over and over, and it's such an
Veilguard did not have that many choices throughout it. It was much more linear.
empowering feeling as a player, just having agency over how these different areas are going to go, and obviously knowing that you're not only changing those relationships, but who's going to show up in that final fight. But for those who don't know, in a post-Fallout 4 world, there was a lot of debate on what's better, Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas. And I was always a Fallout 3 guy. Why is that? Yeah, New Vegas is better written. Yeah, New Vegas has better choice. But
New Fallout 3 feels like Fallout 3 feels like a proof of concept, whereas New Vegas is a complete game.
Tone and atmosphere do so much for me in games that
because Fallout 3 was basically just Fallout 1 and 2 rolled together into this new format.
Fallout 3 always won my heart, and I also thought it was a pretty well-written game itself.
Yeah, it was bad.
But ladies and gentlemen, that is what I think makes Origins so different. Tone and atmosphere. The soundtrack is composed by Einon.
The soundtrack of Origins is iconic throughout. The soundtrack of Inquisition is forgettable as hell, and the soundtrack of Veilguard, I didn't even notice it. And same thing for Dragon Age 2. Like, the soundtrack of Dragon Age 2 is practically non-existent.
He's just a wonderful talent. He's worked on, I just spoke about Fallout 3. He worked on that. He's worked on so many great games, and he just has a soundscape that's immediately recognizable and is so fitting for Dragon Age. And this is one of my critiques of Veilguard is there are
I don't know if you caught it, but it's like
so
Sten is like, I am Sten of the Beresad, the Vanguard.
Age.
The Vanguard of the Kunari people.
Recognizable and is so
and then you're like, what's a Kunari? And he just says, yeah, look, I'm not going to sit here and explain my fucking ethnicity to you. If you're that fucking stupid, that's your problem. What a fucking giga chat. I love Stan. He's such a badass.
I think if you're being just objective looking at it without the context of the series, you go, that's good. Like, some of the tracks in Veilguard are actually really good, but they just don't fit the vibe of the series, or sometimes even the
Come on, Manny. If the soundtrack doesn't fit the vibe, it's a bad soundtrack.
Scene where something like Dragon Age Origins is very brooding, right? And you need that feel because you have the Darkspawn threat that's kind of emerging. You can feel a little bit of the Lord of the Rings energy, not only in the soundtrack, but the way the Darkspawn are presented. One of my favorite scenes in all of video games is absolutely when the war between all of these
The
humans,
Battle
all
of
of these
Ostagar
different
is so
races,
good.
is about to break out against the Darkspawn. They're lining up. It's got a Helm's Deep feel to it. And it is also the heart of one of gaming's greatest betrayals, I think, ever. That totally sets the plot up
Oh yeah.
for you to get emotionally invested. But I think underlining all of that is this wonderful, bombastic, epic
And another thing that like this does, this initial betrayal of Logain, is that it immediately sets you up for the decision near the end, where the quote unquote bad decision is not just that you being an asshole, it's you being a utilitarian. It's you going, hey, let's not kill this person who is a really good general and fighter. Let's actually make him a Grey Warden. Let's actually make use of this person rather than just killing them. Versus, sticking to your ethical guns and executing him for treason.
brooding soundtrack. It really defines the locations you're in. If I mute my game and I run around like the Kakari Wilds in the beginning of Origins,
You
it's
lose a
kind of just
lot.
a messy looking forest, but with that heavy type of music over on top of it, plus the enemies you're fighting, it really does add this whole layer for me that just
Yeah.
elevates the experience completely.
Here's the thing that Origins proves, right? If you don't have the graphics, ambiance, and atmosphere save your game. And here's the thing that Inquisition proves. If you have the graphics and you don't have the ambiance and the atmosphere, your game feels like shit.
Completely. And it really does make me wonder with the response to Veilguard if BioWare will ever take a chance at re-releasing some of these Dragon Age games. I do think it's a massive error for them to not be doing this, and it's
They've already confirmed that they can't because they fired all the people who knew how to handle those engines, so they can't do it.
one thing I'm going to continue to beat the war drum on. I'm begging you, BioWare, please bring these games back. The only thing is I worry
We do need we would benefit a lot from an Origins remake just because the engines of Origin is very unstable and it's very crash heavy, and so you have a lot of problems with playing it for a very long time. And if you don't know how to fix certain problems, you're gonna struggle. It's why there are mods that help with those crashes, but there's not a single thing you can do to just completely eliminate them, and that's a problem.
about in a world where like game developers are sometimes very focused on fixing things that don't need to be fixed. I say this as one myself. Like BioWare, I could totally see a world where they actually like tweak Origins too much and they leave
Oh yeah.
Dragon Age Inquisition the same if they were to re-release that. And it's like, no, you got to do it the opposite way, man. Like just bring this one back as a timeless gem. But I also would love to see this re-released for a number of reasons. Number one,
I definitely think that if they were to re-release Origins, they'd fuck it up
it's like lockdown on EA Play. And honestly, this game crashes a lot for me on PC. It's
for
great
everybody.
on Xbox back compat. It loads quickly there. It looks great there. I would love to see this game like handheld on Switch. Like I just feel there's a good reason to bring back Dragon Age. And I do feel like BioWare, whether they mean it or not, is creating
By the way, it is funny because like I'm watching him play as well, and I'm like, God, he's so bad at the game. But he doesn't need to be good. It doesn't need to be good. But I'm just looking at it, and it's like he's using a sword with a rogue. He should be using a dagger. He doesn't have momentum on. You could see it. You could see that it's off. He hasn't extended the bar to fill up the whole screen. He has below the belt right there. He's not using his abilities. He's not doing any of the things that he should be doing to increase his effectiveness. But it's like it doesn't really matter. He's probably not even playing on the hard difficulty. He's just vibing.
this sort of scale between Dragon Age and Mass Effect that if you're a company, I mean, granted, as a fan, I feel this way where I like Mass Effect more than Dragon Age, but you are creating
I definitely think that the Mass Effect series blows Dragon Age out of the water. At the same time, Origins individually is better than any single Mass Effect game.
I think, an imbalance. Like, oh, Mass Effect is more important to us than Dragon Age. I'm like, well, Inquisition sold like 12 plus million copies. Why wouldn't you want to re-release like one of the oldest games in the
Oh, because they lost money with it. That's it. Actually, they didn't lose money with Inquisition, but they're definitely losing money with Veilguard. And Dragon Age 2 definitely didn't do well. And the problem is, Inquisition sold a lot, didn't do that well. Dragon Age 2 didn't sell a lot. Dragon Age Origins and the Dragon Age Origins Enhanced Edition sold really well. I think Origins Enhanced Edition, Ultimate Edition, blew Inquisition out of the water in terms of its reception. But it's like when you actually compare everything, you very much realize that the audience that BioWare is going for when it comes to Dragon Age is not the general gaming audience. It's not people who actually want to play video games. It's people who want to play slice of life novels, and so they've latched onto fantasy. And one thing that Baldur's Gate 3 did really well is they added the fantasy. They added the cool thing that all of the gamers want. The choices, they added the RPG elements, they added all the endings, they added all this stuff. And then on top of that, they drizzled the slice of life novel for the Twitter people. And that created a 10 out of 10 RPG. That's what Baldur's Gate 3 is. It's a 10 out of 10 RPG. Origins had that to some extent. I think it's a 9 out of 10. It's not on the same. It's not as good as Baldur's Gate 3, I think, but it's definitely really, really good. It's definitely a 9 out of 10. Nowadays, it was a 10 out of 10 at the time, but nowadays it's a 9 out of 10 because we've grown so much as a medium. The video game medium has grown so much that right now there are some shortcomings that Origin has, namely its engine. It crashes a lot. The graphics of Origin have kind of, aged not so well. There are a lot of textures in that game that could be a lot better, and so the game would benefit a lot from a remasterization or even a full remake where they update the graphics and they give us a more defined aesthetic while maintaining the actual aesthetic of Origins, right? I would not want the dark spawn of Inquisition or Veilguard or even Dragon Age 2 in in Origins. I like that the Genlocks are very clearly just dwarves. I like that the Harlocks are humans. I like that you can tell that the Shrieks are the elven ones, and how they have some spirit abilities, or not spirit ability, but like psychic abilities almost. I like that the emissaries are either humans um, or either Herlocks or Genlocks. I like that it's not like its own thing off to the side, because that allowed something that appeared in the Flash game that has now been discontinued and can't be played anymore, unfortunately, which was like an ogre emissary. That is such a badass concept, right? An ogre emissary, like this giant monster that's fucking hurling fireballs and brutalizing everything that comes close to it. That's a final boss if I've ever seen one, right? But none of that is possible in Dragon Age 2, Inquisition, or Veilguard. Veilguard doesn't even have Shrieks or Genlocks, and barely has emissaries. Like the Darkspawn in Veilguard got downgraded so hard, so hard. It's not even describable, right? But yeah, like we definitely should get a remaster for Origins because the game deserves one. But we're never going to get it because BioWare fired everybody who knew how to play that game and who knew how to not who knew how to play that game, but who knew how to work that
in the
engine.
series. I just feel it would do so much for them. Like a
Yes.
Dragon Age Legendary Edition is what I've called it, where you bring back at
Oh yeah.
least Dragon Age Origins and Dragon Age 2. I mean, Inquisition admittedly is readily available, but imagine all these games brushed up a little bit on the visual front and just presented as is with some gameplay tweaks for quality of life enhancements. I can think of very few because I'm extremely biased in the hands of something like Origins.
I
But when I
definitely
think
I
of
definitely think that the gameplay balance of Origins is pretty good. I don't know what you would do to quote unquote fix the gameplay. There's some things that are like not working as intended. For example, messy kills doesn't work as intended. Weakens darkspawn doesn't work as intended. There's a few things in the game that don't work as intended, and so a legendary edition should absolutely fix those. But in terms of like actual balance, I don't know. I don't know that there is anything. I definitely think that if they were going to do that, they could add even like an additional like custom campaign, like a DLC thing, and I think that would be very interesting to play through because the custom campaigns of Origins are awesome.
like Inquisition, I could lay out like 6 different quality of life improvements that BioWare could do.
And Inquisition absolutely needs so much reworking. And it's like it's not even the problem with Inquisition wasn't even about, oh, we didn't have enough time. No, you had the wrong direction.
Immediately, one of the first
If
being
you had
just
more
tweaking
time,
the
you would have
economy
kept
of a
going in the
war
wrong
table. That would
direction.
go so far for that game, and honestly make it possibly like right there neck and neck with Origins for me, just by nature of like the plot being really good in Dragon Age Inquisition and how it sets up souls and everything, plus a lot of the main quest and choices being there are great. It just takes a while to get to all of that. But Dragon Age Origins, I think the thing people struggle a lot with in this game is the combat, and all I can encourage you to do is don't
The only people who struggle with the combat in Origins are the people who are so Adderall brained that they should really not be playing RPGs. They should be playing action games. And honestly, most of them shouldn't even be playing action games. They should be playing slice of life visual novels.
be intimidated, man. Like if you look at it and you go, that's just not my
Just
style
read.
game, no matter how good
Just
you say
fucking
it is.
read. Just sit down
I
and
get
read.
it, but to me, if you've like played something such as Knights
You're
of
a
the
grown
Old
ass
Republic,
man. Read the
then you
fucking
can
tooltip.
handle something like this. Dragon Age Origins can be tough. Like when you get swarmed by a lot of enemies early game, you can get bounced pretty
Yeah,
quickly.
if you're bad at
There
the
is a
game.
learning curve there, but you have great
If you're bad at the game and you went for a high difficulty, yeah, you're gonna get bounced around. But it's like just read the tooltips. It's not that hard. It's like in Origins, there's a few abilities. Actually, I do take this. I now that I think about it, there are a few abilities that are just like bad. But it's like if they made two changes, right? Two major changes in Origins that would make every ability useful is if your attack speed also translated into the speed of your abilities, like it does in Dragon Age 2, immediately many of the abilities that you get in Origins suddenly become good when they were bad before because they just lost out to you just continuing to auto attack at a higher speed thanks to haste or balm of speed or balm of swiftness. I mean, or any other thing that increases the effectiveness of your auto attacking. Um, that would immediately be a major thing, and just the second thing would be going through certain abilities, like, for example, Critical Strike for the two-hander, where it's basically just the same as Mighty Blow for 3 times the cost. And also, it has a chance of one-shotting things that are very low health. But realistically, you're just going to kill it the next time you hit it anyway, so you don't actually need that all that much. So it's just that is definitely a thing that could definitely use some work. Like just take out critical strike altogether and add the ability to automatically kill things that are low enough health to the two-hander, and already you have all of that effectiveness, and you didn't need critical strike for that. Um, but overall, yeah, no, there's a couple abilities. There's a couple, and this comes down to things that aren't working as intended, right? I think that could all be put into if they went in and they looked through it and they went, okay, this isn't how we wanted it to be, so let's fix it. This isn't how we wanted it to be, let's fix it. If they just did that, the game would be a 10 out of 10 again.
build crafting and who you pick to play as, not just in personality, but also the traits that come with that, the combat buffs that come with that, the skills you pick when leveling up. Again, if you've played KOTOR, you know this already, that it's a spiritual sequel, but there's a lot of building here. And also, I mean, look, I have talked about all this. I haven't even gotten to the characters. Going back to this game,
Yeah.
I think this might be one of the
He
best
talked for
casts in
15 minutes
gaming
about
ever.
Origins, didn't
Like
even
you just
really
look
talk
at
about
characters like
the
Liliana and
the
Morgan, and you look at
experience
how
of the game.
relevant they are throughout the entire series. Morgan, especially, just one of the greatest characters potentially ever made. But they all start here in Origins. Alistair is extremely important. Starts here in
Erased in
Origins. Like
Veilguard.
those are the big three to me that always stand out in my head.
Yeah.
One of the
It's
biggest shames with
Alistair.
Origins
Like
is that
every single companion in Origins has, except for Ogren, has such a big impact on the story of Dragon Age that it's ridiculous. Like Alistair, if you make him king, he becomes one of the greatest kings of that Ferelden has ever seen. He should be mentioned in Veilguard. Liliana becomes the hand of the divine. She should be mentioned in. She has the possibility of being the divine. She should be mentioned in Veilguard. That decision should matter in Veilguard. Zephyr, fucking Sten becomes the Arashok. What the hell? This. Oh my god. Oh, I'm getting so pissed off about this again. Oh my god. I'm getting so pissed off about this again. Shale. Oh, Win. I mean, Win's dead by Inquisition. Still. Ah, fuck.
they only gave
Ogren should have been on Weishaupt. Ogren should have gotten to be a badass in Veilguard. He should have been at Weishaupt. He should have been fucking up Darkspawn. I don't give a fuck what your opinion on the matter is. If you disagree, you're wrong.
Liliana like character-based DLC that filled in her backstory. Like maybe my eyes are a bit bigger than my stomach because Dragon Age Origins got so much DLC. We'll talk about that in a sec. But I mean, imagine if like Morgan got her own DLC and
I mean,
Alistair and so
to be fair, the DLCs in Origin were basically just custom campaigns, right? They opened your eyes to what modders could make. And if you actually look at the modding scene in Origins, which unfortunately, it's been 15 years, it's kind of dead now. I definitely would love it if the modding scene for Origins just came back after Veilguard and we started to get more of that. I think that'd be badass. But unfortunately, I doubt that that's going to happen. It would be amazing if we got more of those custom campaigns, just because of how awesome it can be to just have more of that content and having the community expressing themselves in the world by making their own content. And hey, you could even make like a full-on dating sim in the setting of Dragon Age with Dragon Age Origins, and it'd be a lot of fun. But
on
it's,
and
yeah,
so forth. I feel like there was a lot of room
kind of
here,
dead
and it
now.
was
It's been
different.
it's been
Instead
a
of
long
playing
time.
as your character, you play as Liliana, and it brought you a little bit closer to her
You could even play it. There was even Darkspawn Chronicles, and it was so good. I hope he mentions it.
as a character. I mean, this was the game that was the first for me in a lot of different areas. It was my first HD TV game. I remember getting
The Origins deal. Like I'm thinking about the Origins DLCs. They're so much better than anything that BioWare put out since in terms of DLCs. Like in Dragon Age 2, Inquisition, and Veilguard, it's like the DLCs of Dragon Age 2 are just like little side content that you do for like better loot and a little bit of extra context for your character. Although realistically, Mark of the Assassin is just a throwaway. It's just a throwaway story. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really have an impact. And Legacy is just there to set up Corypheus for Inquisition. So it's like, right? And then Inquisition, the only DLC anybody really remembers is Trespasser. Nobody cares about in fact, most people don't even like the Descent, even though it had a pretty good atmosphere. But the actual like traversal of the DLC was so boring, dude. The DLC itself was boring. It had okay atmosphere, but then again, I'm a Deep Roads fan. And fighting the Darkspawn there was fun. Fighting the finding out about those dwarves that are connected to the Titans and then they never show up again was a little annoying. Just because they never show up again, like they should have been appearing in Veilguard with the Titan reawakening and all that stuff. That would have been awesome. Um, but it's like it really feels like the DLCs for Origins are so much better than anything that 2 Inquisition and Veilguard had.
Vizio 28-inch TV and firing up this game and being a dumbass and having standard definition cables plugged in and thinking the image looked awful and that the TV was broken. So
God, I remember playing Origins on the console on my Xbox 360 when I was a wee little boy, and just sitting down for like an hour talking to Duncan, delivering darkspawn blood vials again and again and again because you'd get XP each time, and so you could just get to max level just doing that. It was a lot of I have this like core memory. And then in Origins on the PC, you can do the same thing when you get to the end of the Haven quest line for the Urn of Sacred Ashes. When you get to the part with the High Dragon, if you just exit that area and then re-enter it, you get like 300 XP each time. So you could just do that a bunch of times to max out your character. And I do it almost every time that I'm just playing by myself because I like playing at max level with all my skills. It's fun for me.
Unplugged it for a couple weeks. My parents came in, they're like, why aren't you using the TV we got you for Christmas? And then they taught me that there are different inputs there. And so I got to play Dragon Age Origins in glorious high definition, and I was beyond happy. So that opened my mind to something. And then I played it again, and I downloaded DLC for the first time, and that was really cool for me. Like, the Return to Ostagar DLC blew my friggin' mind when I was younger, because it was already like such a massive emotional moment for the game's story, and to go back there and see like what happened to my man Kalen. Like, I'll always remember being in complete denial, like, we're gonna find him, find him, he's gonna be okay. It's like, no, don't think so. So I do think that one thing isn't talked about enough with Origins, and that
Honestly though, the way I always pictured Kalen dying is like the way that ogre killed him. He has him in one hand, and then he like squeezes him, and there's a gush of blood. Like, that ogre drove its thumb into Kalen's chest, like, for sure.
that is its DLC and how
He just
great
went.
it is. I know some people are a little like in the middle on Awakening. Confession, Origins is one of my favorite games of all time. I've never played Awakening.
You should. You should. Everybody who dislikes Awakening is wrong.
What's wrong?
It's okay to be wrong. It's okay. It's okay. I'm not mad at you for being wrong. You're still wrong, though.
For the holiday break, but yeah, like DLC has always been such a weak component for me in the terms of like picking it up. If like I don't get it at a very specific moment, I almost never get to it, as I'll highlight in that future video. But I do think Dragon Age Origins is a standout example for excellently done DLC. Like, you'll find new companions.
Warden's Peak, amazing. Soldier's Peak, I mean, amazing. Golds of Amgarak, hardest fight in the game, and in fact, I would argue that the Harvester fight in Origins is the hardest fight in the franchise by far, whilst still being a fair fight. I think that the fight against the Harvester is a fair fight, but it's definitely made in the sense of, hey, you're going to get an OP ass weapon from this if you finish this on a high difficulty. This means you better be as good at playing this game as you can be. You better know all the tricks. You better have a character that's as strong as can be. You better be ready to fight this thing. And if you're not, you're going to lose. And I think that that's exactly how you should do that sort of fight. And it doesn't feel bad to lose against the Harvester. Awesome fight. I also really like the Witch Hunt DLC, but that's because, I'm a Morrigan romancer every time. So, getting to just leave these nerds behind and go off and live with my witch wife in the Fade is just peak for me. And Shale is awesome, and going to Honleith and getting that little quest done and fighting Kitty and doing all that stuff is awesome. And I just really like the DLCs for Origin. I think they're all peak.
Quest lines in it,
and the rewards. The rewards for the DLC are also really good. I think that that's important. I think it's important when the DLC gives you equipment and that equipment is good.
Dragon Age the Veilguard from the entire conversation, and just take a look at Dragon Age Origins on its own. I still think it's a bit of an anomaly compared to the rest of what BioWare has done, both a little bit before and especially after Dragon Age Origins. So it's just a very, very interesting video game to me on that level. But
it's an anomaly both in quality and type. Yeah, definitely.
It's also just one that I think is worth studying, and how important dialogue selection is, how important writing quality is, and how it can very much carry a game's experience. I do feel like AAA game development, not just BioWare, but across the board, is undervaluing great writing, and that's why
they've fallen the fuck off.
Get attached to characters in a game like Baldur's Gate. The motion capture was great, and the writing was phenomenal, and it built.
The animations in Veilguard aren't terrible. But that's because, and I've noticed this, they cut off a lot of them. Like there's there's a scene in Davrin's Quest where in the original gameplay footage that we're shown, guys, Davrin just straightens up and walks like this. And you can tell from the started frames of every time somebody walks in that game that that's exactly how they walk. They just walk like this. Like, what the fuck? Who walks like that? Nobody walks like that. Who made that animation? Fire them. Get somebody better. Seriously, man. If I go to McDonald's and I ask for a burger and they give me a weirdo ass burger, I'ma be upset. And that person's probably not going to have their job for very long if that's the type of burger they're doing. So my question is, why do we fucking take this shit in video games? The animations are trash. The animations in Inquisition are trash. Seriously. Every fucking time somebody points at something in Inquisition, their arm looks like this. That is not how you point. Like you look like a fuck. They look like fucking children moving around. I fucking hate the animations in Inquisition. Somehow the animations in Origins aged well. How did Origins age better than Inquisition? It blows my fucking mind.
Built out the world through these characters. I think it's undermined because I think a lot of investors
and the faces too. Like the faces in Origins, despite the graphical fidelity not being that great, are so much better than in Inquisition, and even in Dragon Age 2. So much better. Veilguard, I'll admit, Veilguard had better faces, but like the heads are too big.
see explosions, big.
And the worst part for Veilguard is like I would look at the models and I'm like, that looks kind of weird to me, but I don't know why. And then somebody pointed out that it's because the heads are too big, and then they'll like show it and like make the head slightly smaller and the shoulders slightly bigger, and it's like every single model suddenly looks right, and I'm like, oh, oh, that's a problem. That's the sort of thing you need to patch. That's the sort of thing you need to fix. It's like the Silent Hill 2 remake guys fixed it. Like people were pointing out, hey, this character's head looks too big and her chest looks too small. She looks like a bobblehead. And people were like throwing insults at these people. And then the actual devs went, hey, you're right. We fixed it.
Damage numbers,
Just fix
combat,
it, please.
excitement,
Please, for the
flash,
love of
flash,
God, fix
flash,
it.
and they think that's what sells. But people
Yeah,
are
no.
seeing through this stuff, and so
The thing is, more and more, these AAA devs need to understand something. Specifically with RPG players, we are very picky. We have the best games already made. And the best part about an RPG is that they don't age. A good RPG doesn't age. It's evergreen. You can replay it as many times as you want because slight differences add up and it feels fresh. It feels good to play and re-remember that and re-experience those things. It feels good to do that and you don't lose anything over time. Like Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 are evergreen games. They don't have an amazing player base by now, I think. But like, if I go and look this up, let me see. Let me see. Baldur's Gate 2 Enhanced Edition charts. It has 350 players on a 20-plus-year-old game. Like, if I look this, if I look, and by the way, that's more than Dragon Age 2. Like, it has more players than Dragon Age 2, and it's a game from 2001. Actually, it's from 2000 in North America. Whatever. So it's like, yeah. And if you look at just Baldur's Gate 1 charts, it's probably going to be less, I think. I think it's going to be less. Let me see. Baldur's Gate 1. Oh, it's actually the same. But it's like, these charts show that these RPGs are evergreen. People will keep playing them. The quality doesn't go down over time. But with action games, you do need a new one because eventually that doesn't hit the same, right? It's the endorphins don't it doesn't work the same. With RPGs, you're already going for a smaller. You're already going to go for a smaller population because there's just fewer of us, right? Most people who play video games, they've got better shit to do with their lives than sit down and read in their video game, right? But RPG players want that. And so when you take an RPG and you turn it into a mindless action game, the RPG fans are going to be disappointed and they're not going to be as interested. And that's what is being shown by Veilguard. People could look at it and tell that, yeah, no, this isn't an actual RPG. This isn't what I want out of Dragon Age. And because the Inquisition was also a disappointment, Veilguard sold like dick. And nobody likes Dick. Nobody be buying that shit. That's why you can put it on TV, and nobody cares. It doesn't bring up your rating. It doesn't do anything. Nobody cares. It doesn't sell. Titties sell. Titties sell. People like titties, and you know what sold like titties? Baldur's Gate 3. And it was an RPG where the whole thing about it was reading. 90% of Baldur's Gate 3 is reading. It's reading dialogue options. It's reading consequences of dialogue options. It's reading your ability tooltips. It's reading what your enemy's response to you did. It's 90% of Baldur's Gate 3 is reading. And Veilguard, 90% of it is just mashing buttons until things stop moving. And that's why it didn't sell well.
I just look at Dragon Age Origins more and more as this continuously fascinating game that it still remains as one of my favorites of all time. And so now I'm going to wrap up
It's
this
like
video
I said,
and go
good
play some
RPGs
more.
don't
So,
age.
ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts on Dragon Age Origins after playing Veilguard, if you play it at all, down below. Curious to get your thoughts. Other than that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.
Really good video by Matty Plays. Yeah, I agree with almost everything he said about it. And I think I made my own thoughts on the matter clear. Origins and other RPGs like Origins are, in fact, evergreen. They don't age. Games like Inquisition do. And, you know, a year after Inquisition came out, it was an old game. 15 years after Origins came out, it's not an old game. It is an old game, but it's not it hasn't aged in the same way. It's not dated. It doesn't feel bad to play Origins because Origins was made in such a way where it hits all of the things that people want out of a good RPG, whereas Veilguard doesn't. Inquisition doesn't. And a lot of the recent RPGs that have been, being put out by AAA studios, they just do not hit those important those important lines with when it comes to RPGs. And so I think that's the major failing of a lot of these more recent games. But with that being said, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, as I said already. Drop a comment telling me what you think about, current AAA RPGs. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one. Cheers.